Hello, I'm Mr. Daly. Thank you for watching this video. The video is intended to help my Year 11 class revise for the Cambridge IGCSE in English Literature, but I hope it would prove useful to any of you who are studying Wordsworth's poem. I'd like to start by giving you a little background information on Romantic poetry. Romanticism has a much wider meaning than the common use of the term romantic, referring to a range of developments in literature, philosophy and music in the late 18th and early 19th century. The term's not without its problems. It's applied retrospectively to a wide range of writers, philosophers and musicians who wouldn't have used that term themselves, and this would include Wordsworth, who along with Coleridge, Shelley and Keats is one of the poets who generally spring to mind when reference is made to romantic verse. Nevertheless, we can make some general claims that the literature of the Romantic era was a reaction to both the revelation of human potential and the dehumanizing effects of the Industrial Revolution, an interest in spirituality and dissenting religious practices, the events and ideologies of the French Revolution and the British involvement in the wars that followed it, and also Romanticism can be seen as a rejection of the Enlightenment paradigm that came before it. On the following table we can compare some of the features of the Enlightenment and Romanticism. For example, in the Enlightenment there was an emphasis on logic and scientific observation, whereas Romanticism was more interested in emotion, imagination and reflection on inner feelings. Please pause the screen to have a closer look at the comparison between Enlightenment and Romanticism if you wish. What's certain is that Romantic poets believed that their role was to inform others, get them to see the world in a different way, to challenge the status quo and inspire people to actually make a radical change in society. The fact that this poem is inspired by an urban setting is unusual, and that Romantic poetry would be more usually associated with the celebration of natural scenes, but a little more on that later. We'll be analysing the poem using a simple structure to organise our ideas under the acronym SMILE. So don't forget to smile when you're thinking or writing about poetry. The S is for structure, the M for meaning, the I for imagery, the L for language, and the E for effect. A more effective order in which to remember these features may also be remembered with the acronym MIS-LI. So starting about considering the general meaning of the poem in the introduction and ending up with its effect in your conclusion. We start with the meaning of the poem itself. The fact the poem is a dated title gives the impression that it's a spontaneous piece of writing emerging from the speaker's oar, imbuing this majestic vision of the city. We do actually have a journal entry from Wordsworth's sister Dorothy that suggests the view that inspired the poem actually came on July the 31st, as she and Wordsworth were crossing over Westminster Bridge in a small carriage on their way out of the city. She writes of a beautiful sight as we crossed Westminster Bridge. The houses, not overhung by their clouds of smoke, were spread out endlessly, yet the sun shone so brightly with such a pure light that there was something like the purity of one of nature's own grand spectacles. And we certainly see this reflected in the content of the poem. The speaker in the poem seems inspired by this view from Westminster Bridge, looking out over the city early on in the morning, whilst the inhabitants are asleep and the sky is not polluted with the smoke from houses or factories. The speaker is presented with this beautiful vision of the city. In terms of structure, the poem is a Petrarchan sonnet. This means that it's a 14-line poem with a regular rhyme scheme, written largely in iambic pentameter. We have some trochaic substitution here in the first line, but nevertheless a regular rhyme and rhythm. Significantly, Petrarchan sonnets are usually associated with themes such as love at first sight, unrequited love and obsessive yearning, This might lead to a simplistic conclusion that the poem is a straightforward sentimental description of the city, but as we'll see, there is more depth to Wordsworth's work than that. Characteristically for a Petrarchan sonnet, the poem is split into two parts, an octave in the first 8 lines which present the theme or problem, here obviously the beauty of this vision of the city, and then on the 9th line what's sometimes referred to as the volta or turn, where we have a following sestet that either develops the original theme or offers a solution to the original problem. Here that's signalled by the use of the word never, here on line 9, where we have a further sort of exaltation of how singularly beautiful the view of the city is. Let's take a closer look at the individual lines of the poem. Now the poem starts with an hyperbole, one which has got great impact for a romantic poet, as it seems to be suggesting that the city is actually more beautiful than anything on earth, that anything nature has to offer. On the second line we see this inversion which places the emphasis on the word dull, and here it seems that Wordsworth is challenging the reader in the sense that if he's claiming that if you're not moved by a sight such as this, it wouldn't be because there's anything unimpressive about the sight. It would actually suggest that you were the one lacking something in your soul. We've got a slight paradox on the last line. The use of the word majesty has obviously got connotations of power and dignity as well as beauty. But we've got the word here touching as well, and there seems to be a bit of a contrast between something that's intimate and personal, touching, and something that's grand and public in terms of being majestic. And so with this last line there's the sense that Wordsworth is capturing the paradox of feeling distanced from something that is familiar, such as the sight of the city as the speaker views it in this new and different light. Next we've got the personification of the city itself with the simile like a garment. The city's wearing the beauty of the morning, compared to the garment here, a piece of clothing with the simile. The enumeration of the features of this city, the ships, towers, domes, theatres and temples, give us this sense of the commerce, the law, the government, the entertainment and the religion which are supported by the city, and these are sort of beautified by appearing in a natural context, open unto the fields and to the sky. And if we look at the adjectives that are being used here to describe the morning and the features of the city, they're significant. We've got the morning as silent and bare, meaning here unadorned, it's open to view, and importantly it's devoid of people. The quality of the morning itself is what makes the city appear pristine and sullied, or as it says here, bright and glittering, in the absence of the smoke from people's homes or the factories. Now here we can see that the speaker returns to the bold claim from the beginning of the poem. He's using a tricolon structure with a repetition of the word never to impress upon the reader the effect that this most awe-inspiring sight he's ever seen in his life has had on him. The phrase "in his first splendour" is a personification of the sun, so he's talking here about the light of the sun as it rises at dawn, and compares the effect of this dawn light on the city favourably. The cityscape is favoured over the more natural settings of valley, rock and hill. But there's a little bit of a paradox here. There seems to be a paradox here with this exclamation in the line and the repetition of never, it almost seems as if the writer is trying too hard to convince the reader. And it raises the question, why does the city seem to inspire a deeper calm in the poet than the rural settings he describes, which we might expect to have a more calming effect? In the final 3 lines, we have the river itself personified as a figure that's free to proceed at its own pace. The houses are personified as being asleep, and the city itself is personified as a creature at rest. And again, this sense of paradox, the excitement expressed by the speaker with these exclamations, seem to stem from the fact that the energy and the vitality that constitute the nature of the city is currently at rest, as if the sublimity of the city can only be experienced when its essence, its hustle and bustle and noise, lays dormant. So if we're to consider the overall effect of the poem, Wordsworth, in his preface to the lyrical ballads in 1800, described poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, taking its origin from emotion, recollected in tranquility. And it seems that the speaker in the poem has found a moment of tranquility to contemplate the city. However, it's as we said earlier on, it's not a straightforward love poem to the city as the Petrarchan structure suggests. There's the use of subtle irony and paradox, not least the fact that this is a romantic poem describing an urban setting. It seems as if there's a second voice being created that actually questions the beauty of the city. And one of the biggest reasons is that the presence of people is what defines a city, and so the fact that Wordsworth finds its beauty in the absence of its population is problematic. By celebrating the beauty of the sleeping city set in its natural context that's untroubled by human activity, Wordsworth appears to be suggesting that the true beauty of the city can only be reflected in nature and only be realized in the absence of its inhabitants. Thank you for listening.